Hey guys, how are you? The class is running, we're running a little bit late. Doug got stuck in a meeting and then a little bit
Hey
of
guys,
traffic.
how are you?
So he's coming. He'll be here. It might be a few more minutes. So if you guys want to ask me some questions, Christine PSF girl, I don't know who that is. Oh, somebody asked me about my hat. The We the People, and you can see it's got the tomahawk in the background. And this is a Cryptech hat. I don't know if you guys can see that, but we're going to be making some of these. They're actually pretty cool. So I have to make those. I can't use the um, I can't use the print on demand facility because they don't have this. So I have to make them in advance, which is good because when you order them, they're already ready to go, and it totally takes a day or two to get them. Well, let's see. Who do we have here? Hello, Kelly, Bill, Earth Angel, Christine. Still don't know who Christine is. Rita, Barbara Jackson, Joyce. As I say, it looks like I'm not. Is it Pote? Is that right? Stanford. Rita, Stone Cipher, Kelly Hanna, Ageless Nerd. Hey, that's me. And Joanne, Nancy. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I still want to come out there. I still want to come out there. I'm hoping that I can get that done. Hello, Dee and Lynn and Jill and 1313 Purple Dragon. Yeah, I do. Holding that line. Excellent. Scott might even pop in just to say, hey, I'm not 100% sure. He's been really, really busy. Hello, Sue and Lucy, Nancy. Hey, another Ron. Cool name. Carla. You guys have questions? Scott's still feeling he's still feeling a little under the weather, but he's actually feeling a little bit better. But he's still not. I mean, if 100% was perfect, he's still probably only at about 30%. So he's still got a ways to go. John, the hat that you ordered is not the exact hat that I have, but it will. I'm actually eager to see how it comes out. Email me when you get it because I want to see how it looks. Hello, Dana, Martha, Stephanie, Stuart. Got 135 waiting. This is nice. Keith, Bill, Tina. I don't understand, Kelly. Why did he say your name? I don't understand that. Help me. Yes, he did join. He had a lot of intel. Hello, Jacqueline. I'm blind as a bat. So if you see me like squinting up on the camera, I'm like that's because I'm having a hard time reading the notes or the notes. Can't even talk. Where are you guys from? I see Stuart's from Indiana. I'm actually in Southern California. Believe it or not, I'll tell you, California is not nearly as blue as they say it is. Sorry, Kelly. Hold on a second. Excuse me. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, guys. My alarm was going off my car. Prescott Valley, John. Very nice. My actual residence, I maintain my Arizona residency, and the address I have is in Prescott. I love it up there. I lived up there. I actually lived up in Prescott several years. Very nice. Ageless Nerd. I love that name. Eastern Oregon. It's beautiful up there. That's a beautiful country. Minnesota. East Tennessee. Newfoundland. Very nice, Trent. I have a good friend who's on Prince Edward Island. Oh, Michelle, you're in Prescott. Nice. Still waiting on Doug. He looks like he's a little bit later than he wanted to be. Oh, okay. Okay. John, I would probably recognize you if I saw you then. AR-15 Patriot, like that. How is it in Michigan? Lynchburg, Tennessee. Oh, East Valley is great, Tinkerbell. I lived before I lived in Prescott. I actually lived down in Ahwatukee, and had several friends who were out in Mesa and Gilbert. I like the East Valley. I try, Trent. I try. All right. Looks like Doug is joining us. Horrible in Michigan. Doug, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you.
I'm getting ready to do that. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, running in the door. And then my wife's in my office. I'm like, get out.
My camera's going to break. Your camera's going to break. I'm sorry. Guys, Doug and I go way back. So.
And I love giving Scott a hard time because of or Scott. Geez, Louise, now I'm calling you Scott. Love giving Ron a hard time because you know that Dodger hat stuff he likes to wear.
Yes, well, I am a Dodger fan. I still have to have my I have to have my distractions, man. You know that.
Still gotta have your sports, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Baseball and hockey are the two least impacted, but they still are. Hockey is not really woke, but baseball has its woke tendencies here and there, but it's still not nearly as bad as the NFL and the NBA. But anyway, we're late, brother. Let's
yeah, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, you know, I had a meeting afterwards. I told everybody I got to be out of here by 2:30. I got to be home by 3, and I got out of there like 12 till. Hi everybody, how you doing? Mr. Constitution here, running in the door. Got a nice button-down shirt for you today. I love that hat. I'm glad you're wearing that hat again. It's much better than the Dodger hat. But yeah, the We the People with a Tomahawk. I mean, it can't get much better than that.
Exactly. I'm actually having a bunch made in the, are you familiar with the Cryptech camouflage?
No, but
So here, let me see. Let me get it up close here and see if you can
oh,
see.
okay, yeah, I've got a Second Amendment hat with that same design.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I want one.
We can make that happen.
Yeah, I may be considered. I may be considered. All right, we are in the we're in the Bill of Rights. Last week we did the preamble of the Bill of Rights, talked about introduction of the Bill of Rights. We really didn't get into the First Amendment. And so we are at the Bill of Rights. So we have finished the first 7 articles, the preamble of the Bill of Rights. Now we have 27 amendments to go. And what's interesting is the early amendments will take a little bit of time to talk about, but as we proceed, the discussions per amendment become shorter and shorter as we get more into the modern language and more of a modern issues that we're used to. Not that any of them are antiquated or out of style, but it's just the older ones just demand a lot more discussion. So welcome, glad to see you here. Politicalpistachio.com, DouglasVGibbs.com. I have to tell a real quick story, if you don't terribly mind. It'll take me just a couple minutes. My Tuesday night Constitution class in San Juan Capistrano has moved to Dana Point. And the reason why is last week someone decided to be there at the class. It's at a restaurant, and that person, their wife and their teenage daughter were having dinner in the same space that we were having our class, and they took offense to a few things that we were saying and doing and wearing. Oh, one of them was this young lady who had a F Biden shirt. We know what the F stands for, right? And then it said underneath that, and F every one of you that voted for him too. And it was a great shirt. I love the shirt. And I wouldn't personally go around wearing that shirt. I'm not one to, necessarily run around with that language on a piece of clothing, but it worked for her. And she looked like she's a pretty tough gal, short, really short crop hair, Mexican gal that looked like she could get in your face, probably knock you down if she wanted to. And it turns out her line of work was demanded that kind of attitude. And so the guy walks up to her and says, "Hey, I take offense to your shirt." And we're thinking, oh, because of the cussing. No, his daughter's there. No, it's because that F word came before Biden, and that's disrespectful to our president. And she says, "Well, that's not our president. Our president is Trump." And it descended quickly into a battle. She basically stood up, stuck her chest out, and says, "You want to say that a little bit closer to my face?" Kind of thing. And I'm like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. We haven't even done the Pledge of Allegiance yet. Class is first starting. All heck is breaking loose. 4 or 5 of the students jump up. The wife and the daughter of the gentleman jump up. Before I know it, looks like a West Side Story scene. And I'm waiting for the fisticuffs, and I'm not sure if I want to say something, because typically I don't get into name calling type arguments. I get into arguments where I can use my brain to kind of outfox the opponent. This was just a name calling thing. I knew we were in trouble when at one point one of the people referred to another person's size of their member, so we knew we were in trouble. Long story short, I don't get into these kinds of arguments. Number one, because when you get into an argument with a fool, it winds up getting to the point where people are not sure which one's the fool. Number two, you can't reason with unreasonable people. And my favorite, I don't argue with idiots, because they drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience. And so I kind of stayed quiet. And I've been kind of haunted by that. I should have jumped in there too, because I'm the leader of the group kind of thing. But nonetheless, after it happened, I thank the people who stood firm. And then the owner of the restaurant said, because that had happened and he didn't want that happening again at his restaurant, we could no longer hold our classes there. So chalk 1 point for the liberal left, except for the liberal left, and their point turned out to be a point in favor of us, because we moved from a restaurant right off of Ortega Highway to one in the Dana Point Harbor with a view of the ocean. That's our new location tonight. So I'm not going to complain too loud. But anyway, reason why I want to tell you that story is it's amazing to me. We know they're out there, but it's still amazing to me when these people act like, for lack of a better word, asses. And we are surprised when we see it, even though we know where they're out there. And it's kind of frustrating, Because how do you argue with idiots like that? It's just a name calling. Nobody won. It's just a name calling fest. It's frustrating, but he got the class kicked out of that restaurant. That's what he wanted.
Very apropos that we're talking about the First Amendment today.
Yeah, it is. And it is kind of a coincidental. But so if any of you out there live in South Orange County, come out to the Brig restaurant in the Dana Point Harbor. We would love to see you. All right. Class starts at 6. Okay. That all said, here is the language of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Understand, this is to Congress. It's not to businesses. It's not to some state dork. Congress shall make no law. I'm not saying that everybody else can stomp all over these rights. I'm saying that this language was specifically to Congress, saying, hey, Congress, now that we've written this Constitution, we want to make sure you understand something. Don't screw with our religion. Don't mess with our speech. You can't make any laws regarding the press, our ability to assemble, or petition the government for redress grievances. 5 rights enumerated or listed, saying you can't touch. Your job when it comes to our rights is not to be involved in them. And I want people to understand that for a second. Let's real quick go over our rights, because I want to make sure you understand this. Matter of fact, the other night, 2 nights ago, my wife and I decided we'd go out to dinner, and we're in a steak place, and the steak place has like 5 television screens, and they're all on the Olympics. Now, I have had no inclination, no desire to watch the Olympics this year. Number one, they're a year late because of a scamdemic. Number two, when you start hearing stories about athletes that are quitting, athletes that are not putting out their best, athletes that are turning their back on the flag, sometimes a whole team. And in the case of the Mexico softball team, after losing the bronze medal game, some of them threw their uniforms in the trash. And as the Mexican Olympic Committee reminded those players, on those uniforms was the flag of Mexico. So you just threw the flag in the trash. When you see that kind of stuff going on, you really don't want to watch it. I don't have any desire to watch the Olympics, because the pride of American pride in the games and the culture of the thinking of these idiots out there. I used to be an athlete, man. You finish what you start, you put in your best effort, you try to win. And if you don't, you're a good sport about it. That's the way it's supposed to be. And none of those things are applying here in these Olympics. So I had no desire to watch the Olympics, but nonetheless, I didn't have a choice. I'm at the steak place, 5 TVs full of Olympic stuff. So I'm watching the men's volleyball team get ripped a new one. The women's beach volleyball, which I usually don't complain too loud about watching in any setting. Some track and field events and so forth. And then a commercial comes on the TV closest to me, and I can hear the volume from this one. It's the only TV I can hear the volume from. And a Nike commercial comes on. Now, you know that company where they were supporting the players that were kneeling before the national anthem, you know, that company. I have a friend who has a shirt that says, I returned to my Nikes. They made my feet hurt when I stood for the anthem. So this Nike commercial comes on, and it's postulating what the future might look like. And one of the things was, you know, someday the WNBA will be more popular than the NBA. And I'm thinking, well, the way the NBA is going with their thuggishness, their wokeness, and the fact that men are now playing in the sports as women, yeah, that might happen. But nonetheless, that's not what caught my attention. This commercial is going through what might be someday. And then it says, when they declare sport a right. Now, I know it was just a advertising mechanism. They're just trying to catch your attention. But the idea that they believe when they make sport a right, when who makes sport a right? When who decides if anything's a right? Who are you talking about? Government? Ruling elite? The Olympic Committee? Who? Who declares what is a right? And we have this belief in our system that government can declare what a right is or what isn't a right, and establish the parameters of that right, and if it's going to be guaranteed or if it's going to be protected by government or funded by government because they declared it to be a right. That's not how rights work. Your rights are natural rights. They're given to you by God. God existed before government. Therefore, government has no business being involved in your rights because God gave them to you. They're your rights. They belong to you. God gave them to you, and government has no business being involved, much less declaring whether or not something is a right. And then when it does come to our rights, there's only two rights that are actually definite: life and liberty. You have a right to life, you have a right to liberty. Everything else you need to pursue: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't have a right to be happy, but you have a right to pursue it. You don't have a right to own a gun, but you have a right to pursue it. Usually that entails saving up the money to buy it, because government's not supposed to put any obstacles in the way. You don't have a right to an education. You have a right to pursue it. You don't have a right to health insurance. You have a right to pursue it. You don't have the right to have a cake baked exactly the way you want, but you have the right to pursue it. And the reason why is because our rights stop where the next person's rights begin. So if you're pursuing something and it's interfering with somebody else's right, your right stops right there. Hey, bake my cake. Oh, it's against my religious beliefs. No problem. I'll go somewhere else and pursue it elsewhere. Why? Because that right just stopped because the other person's right was in the way. Our rights stop where the other person's rights begin. I can swing my arms all I want, but if I get too close to Ron's nose and I punch him, there's a real problem there because he has a right not to be punched in the face, and I probably will get punched back anyway. So I'm going to be responsible with my right to swing my arms and not punch him in the face because he has a right not to be punched. That's how our rights work. So this idea, oh, well, when they declare sport to be a right, the problem is what they believe is government must make sure it happens. They must fund it and make sure that everybody's got access to it. And in fact, maybe even coerce you to participate. That's not how rights work. Your right is a gift given you by God, and you have the right to operate regarding it or not. You have the right to pursue it or not. And you never lose your right. I hate it when people say, well, they're taking my rights away. They're not taking your right. Your right's yours. What they're doing is they're trying to block your access to your right with silly rules, silly laws, and unconstitutional and tyrannical actions.
Actually, Doug, what I have found they do is with the implementation of a license is a mechanism to turn a right into a privilege that can be revoked.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Now, I need a license to drive. I need a license to fish. I need a license to hunt. Why can't I need an ID to vote? That's my thinking. But anyway, all right. Sometimes I think some of these people should have a license to think. But anyway, so I want you to understand that. So when we read the First Amendment, Second Amendment, I want you to understand your rights. They're yours. You possess them. God gave them to you. So it's saying Congress shall make no law. Congress, none of your business. God gave me my rights, and he was here before you were. God existed before you did. So you got no authority to make any law regarding my religion, my speech, my press, my assembly, my right to petition government for redress grievances, my right to keep and bear arms, my right to be safe in my household without you storming down the door. I have a right to be secure in my persons, my houses, my papers, my effects. I have a right to remain silent. I have a right to my property. I have a right to not be compelled to be a criminal witness against myself. I have a right to not have my property taken, eminent domain, without just compensation. I have a right to a trial. I have a right to a jury. I have all of these rights. They belong to me. And the job is for you not to violate that, for you not to be involved, government. So this idea that government's there to guarantee and protect your rights is absolutely ridiculous. Their job is to get out of the way when it comes to our rights. So First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. In other words, an established church. What was going on is if you had an established church, you had to be a member of that particular religion. You had to attend that church or you could be fined. And also any tax money collected funded that church. That's an established religion. Now we know that the Pilgrims and the early colonists came here for freedom of religion. What's funny about it is they wanted freedom of religion for themselves, but then they established their own established churches, which is fine. I used to say that 11 of the 13 states had established religions at the time of the Constitution, but I screwed up. There was one state that had gotten rid of it a year before the Constitution, the state of Virginia. So actually there was 10 that had established churches at the time of the writing of the Constitution. And even though the First Amendment says that there shall be no established religion, that was to the federal government. It says Congress shall make no law. The states were still allowed to do it. Now, ultimately, in the long run, the states also passed laws to get rid of their established church. And that began with Virginia in 1786. Pennsylvania and Rhode Island were already not practicing that kind of thing. They didn't have established churches in those two states from the very beginning. Then it says, and this is the part that people seem to gloss over. They don't remember it's in the Constitution, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. No law shall be passed prohibiting the free exercise of my religion. So if I want to pray on the steps of the Supreme Court, I should be able to. Wait a second, Doug, separation of church and state. I didn't see that in the Constitution. Understand what we mean here. Back in 1801, January of 1801, Jefferson received a letter from the Danbury Baptists. The Danbury, Connecticut. What was going on is in Danbury, Connecticut, the Congregationalists, which was just an offshoot of the Puritan church, had a iron grip control of the state of Connecticut. If you weren't a Congregationalist, you could not hold office, you couldn't vote, and your tax money went to the Congregationalist church to pay for it. And in Danbury, Connecticut, there was this denomination of Baptists that said, hey, we're being treated like second-class citizens. We can't vote, we can't hold office, and our money's going to some other church. What the heck? So they were excited to see Jefferson in office after the 1800 election, because Jefferson had worked with James Madison to bring about that act for religious freedom in Virginia I just talked about a moment ago, a year before the Constitution. So they were like, man, Jefferson now is president. That's our guy, man. He was involved with bringing freedom of religion to Virginia. He can do it for us as president of the United States. So in January, after the election, November, before his inauguration, I believe at that point it was in March, they wrote him a letter. And Jefferson, soon to be President Jefferson, once he was inaugurated, wrote back saying, I'm sorry, I can't help you. There must be a wall of separation between church and state. So it is there. Well, wait a second, folks. That's what he wrote. But what did he really mean by it? You have to read the context around that sentence. If you read the entire letter, not just those words, here's what you've realized. Jefferson was saying that religion is a state issue. That's between you and Connecticut. You want religious freedom? Get Connecticut to do it. The federal government can't get involved. We cannot dictate to a state regarding religion. There has to be a wall of separation between that. Religion is a state issue, none of our business. Sorry, wish I could help you. Can't do it.
You know, Doug,
that is the separation between church and state.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
And you know, that has been bastardized and twisted and contorted to mean a whole lot of things, up to and including that you know, that men of faith are not supposed to be legislating in government, and that's not anywhere close to what it meant.
Well, gosh, matter of fact, in Article 6 it said there shall be no religious test. when
Right.
it comes to holding office. Anyway,
Exactly. The separation of church and state was designed to prevent the government from imposing a religion on people, not from having men of faith be legislating. In fact, you know what? I believe it was John Adams. Was it John Adams who said that the Constitution was designed wholly for moral men, and we had to have morality in order.
you're in the right ballpark. All
Okay.
right, so you're mixing two quotes by two people.
Okay.
So let me read them both. Benjamin Franklin: only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. Then there's John Adams. And this is the quote I think you were trying to pull out of your head, and a little bit of Benjamin Franklin got stuck in there.
Okay.
You know, it's like, you try to get Adams and there's a little Franklin stuck in your teeth and it just messes everything up, John Adams said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
Right.
It was designed for virtuous people who are godly and follow a godly path and godly moral principles. That's what it was made for. And you want to go a little bit even further, you can go to George Washington in his farewell address: of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. I think that says it all. So here we are. We're in this situation now where the Danbury Baptists are going, well, hey, man, we need help. And Jefferson says, sorry, federal government can't get involved. As president, I can't. That's between you and Connecticut. Now, the reason why that's an important story is that it touches off on a lot of things. You hear me all the time say, well, gosh, Doug, they say to me, in California, they're doing this, and they're doing that, and in New York, and they're doing this, and in this state, they're doing that. Well, and then they say, so where in the Constitution does it save us? Constitution doesn't save you at that level. That's between you and your state. I have an idea. How about you get off your butt and fix it? I'm trying to be mean to you guys. I know you guys are a part of not being the problem, but people seem to think that a piece of paper is going to save them. When it comes to our states acting in a tyrannical manner, that's between us and our states. And we need to be active. We need to do the things we need to do to get our state back on the right track. And a piece of paper is not going to do it. We need to be actively involved. And it begins locally. See, if you get control of your cities, then the cities will eventually get control of the county. And if you get control of your counties, you eventually have control of your state. Of course, in our case, we also have to get control of the voting. That's a whole different ball of wax.
Doug, real quick, a couple of people want to know, and this is a little off topic, but it's still kind of on topic. Okay. They want to know, Sue is asking, how does this affect the Patriots being held without any rights? And I'm not 100%.
Yeah, they're referring to the September 6th detainees.
No,
January 6th, I mean.
January 6th, yes.
Yeah, January 6th detainees. That's what they're referring to. There's 179 people that are being detained unlawfully, I believe, because of January 6th. But anyway, continue. What's the other question? And
well, that is, it's been a minute, and I don't exactly remember what we were discussing when she asked. But I'm
okay. Well, she's referring to those 179 that are being detained.
I think it's probably in line of freedom of speech.
Well, that's a part of it. Also, in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, that says the habeas corpus shall not be suspended. In other words, there's got to be a reason, and they're coming up with bogus reasons. Mr. Luna out there in the desert, his brother is being detained for having been present there and lying to the FBI. Well, he wasn't there. The lie was, well, I wasn't there. You're lying. Are you kidding me? And you have all these people being detained. Why? Because they dared to show up someplace to peaceably assemble. Oh, it wasn't peaceful, Doug. Did you see all that violence? Yeah, all the videos and pictures are showing me that it wasn't the Trump supporters that were the violent ones. It was Antifa plants and government people allowing it to happen. It was a Reichstag thing. So the question is, well, how is that happening if, once again, piece of paper is not going to save us? Unfortunately, usurpers usurp, criminals act criminally, tyrants act tyrannically, regardless of what the paper says. So while I could teach you what the Constitution says, what they're supposed to be doing, that doesn't mean they're following it. And that's where our action is important. It still goes back to us being active, us doing our thing. And those people on January 6th, they were doing their thing, and they got, and a lot of them are getting punished for it. And their message is, you see what happens when you mess with us?
Bill
Don't
Taylor,
fall for it.
Bill Taylor's asking, how can we stop the censorship of those who have different views? For example, the censoring of doctors about the jab.
We need to get alternative, an alternative industry, it seems. But it's just funny because I was talking during my meeting. One of the people in the meeting I had before this was a nurse, and she was talking about how she knows the truth, but she don't dare mention it. She could lose her job. That's what he's referring to. And unfortunately, the Constitution's about government, not about business. What's frustrating is there's a collusion here between government and these businesses and these industries.
Well,
and that's where,
yes,
that's where we're getting outside the Constitution. Where in the Constitution does allow the government to collude
100%
with business? Mercantilism.
You're 100% right on that, Doug. 100% right. Because if you look at what I think we talked about this last week, what we're seeing is we are seeing businesses enforce things that the government can't.
Right.
And that's how they're pushing
collusion.
The communist model. And and again, I think I said this last week, and I'll say it again. The left is 100% right when they talk about the evil corporations, but what they fail to understand is the policies they advocate for are literally only further empowering the very corporations that they claim to hate, and they don't get that.
Well, there are ways around all of this, of course. For example, not that I'm recommending this is the way around for everybody, but this is what's been going for me. The Veterans Administration has decided that if you're not vaccinated, you can't work there. And if you're a veteran, you either better be wearing a mask or be vaccinated. Otherwise, they will not give you care. I can't wear a mask and I can't get vaccinated. And when I say can't, I mean won't, but for good reason, for religious reasons and so forth. I can't wear the mask for medical reasons. Not that I would if I could. But they will not give me my services. Fortunately for me, because I'm Mr. Constitution, I've had 2 doctors step up and say, we'll take care of you. And we're not going to charge you. This is our way of donating to your cause by helping you get healthy, because we need you to be around and kicking. We don't need you dying just yet. You got some more Constitution to teach. So there are ways around things, either through charity, us working with each other, or maybe what businesses to go to or not go to, or perhaps there's going to be an industry that's going to come up that's going to say, you know what, Basilicos. You're familiar with Basilicos in Orange County? The restaurant has this policy: no masks allowed. And if you've been vaccinated, you're not welcome. It's an alternative industry that's popping up. This restaurant's saying, you know what? I disagree. I'm going to be the alternative. And that's good. In a free market economy, we can do that. That's why they're trying to kill the free market too, though. They don't want you to have that choice.
Dan Bongino talks about that quite significantly, about we need to have a parallel business structure where if they fail, if these guys are going to impose their draconian measures on us, that we have an alternative that we can go to.
Exactly. Well, not just an alternative business, but alternative media, which we do. I mean, look at what we're doing right now, right here. Even though they're trying to fight us, shut us down, this is the alternative media. Alternative education. Boy, I tell you what, homeschooling's gotten real popular of late. And eventually maybe even a school system that's semi-public that might emerge beside the public system and push the public system out of business. I don't know. But that's the wonderful thing about America, is we know how to get past the tough things with alternatives. Giving a great example, why did we win the Mexican-American War? Because we figured out an alternative to a problem with firearms jamming. We created a standardized system where all firearm parts are interchangeable. That way, if the firearm jammed and his firearm jammed, no problem. Take apart, put them together, you still have a working firearm. That was the Americans did that. It was an alternative to the problem. That's what we do. So instead of saying, oh, well, there's just no hope, let's find the alternatives. Dan Bongino is exactly right. And I've been preaching the same thing. We don't like it, create a parallel. So there we go. All right. So getting back to now freedom of speech, and we talk about, well, gosh, what about the social media? They're shutting us down. Then create a new social media. Well, what about the news, the mainstream? Then create a new news. Rather than, because see what we're doing when we're fighting them on those things in their arena, it's like going into their football stadium to try to play a game against them with their rules, their referees, and their crowd. Screw that. I'm going to create an alternative spring league and have my own teams, my own players, and we're going to do it that way. That's the way you do it. And it starts locally once again. And also there's ways also to even to play on their turf just a little bit. You know, right now in Riverside County, I'm excited because, man, the school boards are under fire. The school boards, we've got churches and citizens right now that are saying, you know what, we're not going to put up with this sex ed and the CRT. We're not going to put up with it, and we're going to start recalling people if you don't change this stuff. In Orange County, all 5 county supervisors are right now in the process of being recalled for their shenanigans. That's what we need. Oh, you want to protect your freedom of speech and all of that jazz, freedom of religion, you be active. And it starts locally. And also we need to create our alternative locations. I will say this, because I can't wear a mask and won't wear a mask. I know where I can shop and I know where I won't. And guess what? Enough people stop shopping at those places where I won't, they'll go out of business. Walmart wasn't always the powerhouse. Before Walmart, there was Kmart. Before Kmart, there was Fedco and Gymco. The big ones can be toppled. Okay, go ahead.
No, you remember what happened with Coke.
Oh yeah.
When enough people pushed back, Coke backed off. But it took they will feel the wrath. Conservative people generally are very, very good at boycotting. They're much more effective at boycotting than the left.
And as much as the Democrats claim they hate capitalism, they love their money.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They start losing money, guess what? They're going to back off.
Mm-hmm.
Money and power. Well, and it goes back also to the state of Oregon. In the state of Oregon, they get their legislature and their governor are even crazier than California's. So why is it they got wonderful gun laws? Well, my neighbor said it very carefully. He said, well, anytime they try to do a California gun law, we show up in Salem with our rifles hung over our shoulder by the thousands. That's what it takes. The protests we're seeing in Europe, of course, they've got a lot worse than we do, but I'd like to see Americans start doing that. Let's start marching. Let's start saying, hell no. Let's start getting in their face a little bit. And here's my biggest problem. We spend so much time protesting the government. You know what we need to do? We need to have protests in front of the LA Times building. A large protest in front of the CNN building or headquarters there in Los Angeles or in Atlanta or wherever. Let's start having protests there. How about that? Wouldn't that send a message?
It might. I don't know if you're posing that question to me. I don't know how effective.
Well, it was rhetorical, in my opinion.
Right, Matt.
Just me. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. Get back to First Amendment. So we have 5. Notice we have 5 rights here that are listed. Okay, we have religion, speech, press, assembly, petition. That is not a granting of rights. That is not the Constitution saying, oh, here's your rights and they're protected because we say so. It goes back to that Nike commercial. When they declare sport to be a right, this is not declaring those 5 things to be a right. This is declaring that those 5 things exist as rights, and government, it's none of your damn business. Congress shall make no law. I already have the right to religion. I always and to practice my religion, my free exercise of religion without you prohibiting it in any way. I already have a right to free speech, which, by the way, is political speech and religious speech. They already own that right. I'm not asking your permission to have that right, government. Constitution is not giving me that right. It's saying, hey, by the way, government, don't make a law regarding it. It's none of your business. That's my right. However, it is not saying, hey, Google and Facebook, don't interfere with that right. It's not saying that. I'm not saying they can or they should. I'm saying that the Constitution is not there to tell Google and Facebook not to interfere with the right to free speech. That's between you and Google and Facebook. That's where we need to be activists. Not that I'm saying a piece of paper will protect us against the federal government. We need to be activists against them too. But that's where we need to speak up and say, hey, I have freedom of speech. And it's not something that you can choose whether or not I can have. And I don't care if you think the community is in danger because of some scamdemic or global warming or right-wing terrorists.
Well, what really,
that's my right.
You know, it's astonishing to me, Doug, that they have genuinely persuaded a large swath of the population that people who love the Constitution are domestic terrorists. I cannot, for the life of me, reconcile that in my head. I just can't.
Oh, it gets better. Did you hear about the European Union report? A European Union report just came out. I talked about this in my show on KMET 1490 AM on Saturday, that if you have a sense of humor, you may be a right-wing terrorist. I'm not kidding. That's how bananas it's getting. You know, because you putting out those funny memes that, you know, are speaking out against, you know, the truth. Like, what truth? Your truth? So Congress shall make no law.
There is no such thing as your truth. There is the truth.
Exactly. That's my point. That's why I was being sarcastic and facetious at the same time. There's God's truth. And here's the thing about the truth. Let's run over to Declaration of Independence real quick, because it says something very interesting about the truth. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We know it's the truth. I guarantee you, most of those knuckleheads out there, they know what they're doing is wrong, but they're somehow justifying it.
When you say knuckleheads, who? What do you mean?
Well, everybody to the Biden and to the left of him, and some of them even slightly to the right of him. Anybody that stands against the Constitution, anybody that stands against our rights, anybody that supports things like socialism and collectivism, those are the they that I'm talking about. Well, and I believe that a portion of them, I don't think all of them, but I think a portion of them, they know what they're doing is BS.
Well, no, they know what they're doing is they are using the Constitution and the liberty that it gives as a weapon against it to in the furtherance of their stated goal of utopia. Right,
exactly. They know that murdering babies is bad, but the ends justify the means. We'll have a smaller population. That's worth the death. So while it's a wrong that's allowed because, you know, in the end, it's a good thing. That's the problem. And it's their religion.
Right.
But these truths are self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. In other words, if you believe in God and you recognize the truth of biblical truth and things like that, you know what the truth is. And I think there's a lot of people who don't believe that stuff, who know what the truth is. I had a friend of mine, Loki, Tim Curlin, essentially my mentor in the Constitution. He considered himself an agnostic, but he believed in Christian values while he was not a Christian himself. He knew the truth. The truth was self-evident to him. So it has to be a pretty reprobate mind to not recognize the truth. Did you hear what I said? A reprobate mind to not see the truth. It's got to be pretty bad. They got to be pretty evil. That's the reason why the conspiracy theories I hear sometimes about the spirit cooking and the chicken blood and all that, I totally believe it. These people are capable of that stuff because they sure as heck ain't godly. That's for sure. All right. So Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of religion. I talked about that. Prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now let's stop right there for a second. Alexis de Tocqueville. I love talking about this guy. He's originally from France. And in France, well, separation of church and state took a whole new meaning. And he had heard that America was a failure, but that we had a really good penal system. That's Penal, not penal system here. And he came here to investigate that penal system. While he was here, he's like, whoa, government's limited, government's not dictating, government's not mandating, but yet people are not only living well and making their own decisions, why they're making good decisions and they're prosperous. Strange. Then he goes a little further and he talks to people in the pubs and the churches, and he realizes, hey, the pastors are preaching politics and the politicians are praying. But one doesn't control the other. How is that possible? There's no separation of church and state at all. In fact, they're holding Bible studies at the White House. Interesting. The conclusions he came to was the following. And while there's no quotes of him actually saying this, if you read his book, this is essentially what he says through the book. America's strength is in her churches, and America is great because it's good. That's what it came down to for him. And so our problem right now, where we've got people quitting in the Olympics, turning their back on their flags, and violence in the streets, is because we've stopped being that country.
Mm-hmm.
We've stopped being the country that de Tocqueville saw. Go ahead.
Well, by design, I mean, if you listen to the you listen to Yuri Bezmenov, I mean, they've been pumping in the communist agenda into young American heads for the last 50, 60 years, that without any sort of counterbalance, these kids generally believe that what they're doing is right because that's what they've been taught as long as they've been alive. So, and I don't know if they can ever be untaught that. I'm just not sure. Once you have that paradigm, in order to have that paradigm shift, it's going to take a monumental event for these people to have that paradigm shift. That's why it's so imperative that our generation, step up to the plate, because really most of the older people, 40s and mid 30s to current, or to 80s, we're the ones that know what it was like to really, really love our country. Not saying that there's 100, not saying that's 100%, but I'm just saying.
There are youngsters obviously get it, but the percentage is a lot lower. Yeah.
Right.
Now, so we've got this religion. We have freedom of speech. Well, what kind of speech? There's only two speeches that really need protecting: political speech and religious speech. It's not talking about other speech. Well, freedom of speech, that's, the freedom to decide which kind of cake you want. No. Freedom of speech, political speech, or religious speech. That's exactly what they're going after. That's what they were trying to protect, because our ability to disagree is what keeps freedom alive. Our ability to debate and say, you know what, I don't think what you're saying is right. That's what keeps liberty alive. I remember when one time there was a question of the day on this radio station that says, something we're just sick of. And I thought it was going to be like wearing masks or something. And one of the people, it turned out to be daylight savings time was the answer. But when it came to this study, but one of the people in the studio says, well, disagreement. Can't we all just get along? No, that's tyranny. If we're all just in agreement, it's tyranny. I want people disagreeing. I want people standing up for something different. I'm okay with people who disagree with me. Let's duke it out, man, because that's what brings on liberty. That's what liberty is all about. Let's disagree. Let's duke it out, man. And then let's find a compromise that makes us both happy. That's how it's supposed to work. Then you got freedom of the press, right of the people to peaceably assemble, no rioting, no fire starting. and to petition the government for redress of grievances. We have the right to tell our government, hey, what you're doing is screwed up. We don't like it. Here's our petition. And a petition doesn't have to be in writing. What I'm doing right now, when I talk to the government, because I know the NSA is watching, I'm petitioning the government for redress of grievances right now. This is freedom of the speech, freedom of the press, and freedom to petition all in one. I love it. It's like this great political burrito right here. Now, here's the thing. The First Amendment also gives us something else. And I'm going to wrap up with this, and I know you got some questions there. And it's this. People say to me all the time, Doug, I wish the founding fathers would have given us a model to follow, given us a template to follow, take back our country, or to maintain liberty. They did. The First Amendment. Let me remind you again what the 5 rights enumerated there are: religion, speech, press, assembly, petition. In other words, pray about it, talk about it, write about it, gather about it, and be activists about it. That's our template. And notice what's at the top. And I hate preaching to you, but this is important. What's at the top? Religion. In other words, pray about it. If we're not in prayer, the rest of it doesn't matter. If we're not appealing to the highest authority, that's higher than our government, by the way. That's the reason why they don't want us to believe in God, is because they don't want the fact that we're believing in something that's higher than them. If we're not appealing to the higher authority, no wonder we're in trouble. We need to be in prayer.
Well, and then if 1 through 5 of the First Amendment fails, then that's why we have the Second Amendment.
That is exactly right. And I teach that, but we're gonna get to the Second Amendment next week. Now I know everybody's next week. They're like, Second Amendment, I'm there.
I think what we discussed earlier is that we're probably the Second Amendment is probably going to be a 2-week endeavor, just because I remember
the discussions will start rolling.
You actually gave me some food for thought, because I'm an ardent Second Amendment guy, and you gave me some food for thought about states passing laws about guns, and I really had to kind of change my stance on certain things, because I'm like, I don't know. You made some very valid arguments that
right.
that I really had to give some serious consideration to.
Right.
It kind of persuaded me into your camp a little bit, not 100%, but
hey, if I could get Ron to change his mind at all, man, I've accomplished,
especially on the Second Amendment.
Yeah, especially on the Second Amendment.
So,
well, it's funny because I have a friend of mine, George Rombach, which I think you've met. Santa Claus has the beard, and he's got a law degree. He's got a PhD, and he's an accountant. He's a brilliant man, and he used to, when he first started coming to the Constitution class years and years and years ago, he used to debate me on stuff. And his wife told me about 4 or 5 months ago, she says, you know how much George loves you. I said, well, I love him too. She says, no. You did something to George that no one's ever done. You changed his view on something. No one's ever pulled that one off. So when you were saying that, George came to mind, and I appreciate that. That's the ultimate compliment. Now, and I'm glad Ron brought that up, because I want you now, listeners, when we go through the Second Amendment next week, I want you to come into the show, and I hate to sound like a liberal, but with an open mind. I want you to really think about what I'm saying, because what the founders wanted and the way it was supposed to be set up and what way it's supposed to be designed runs counter to a couple of things we think. But when you really digest it and you understand it, you go, okay, now you know what? It does make sense. I don't want to ruin it, so I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, but I want you to understand this Second Amendment conversation is going to be a very much so eye-opening discussion for you, I think. And so we'll get to the Second Amendment next week.
For me,
I am jazzed to be here. Ron, thanks for doing this. Did Scott get a chance to come on early?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
I'm sure he just got busy. I was going to say, for me, what I had to do is I had to reconcile if this is one way, then you can't have it both ways.
Right.
Oh, and that's kind of the thing that I'm again, I don't want to give anything away either. And I want people to understand, to have that open mind, to table your passion at the door and table the passion.
Trust me, there's nobody who loves guns more than me, man.
Right. exactly. But
We have to understand how it was designed.
right. And and so anyway, I'm not going to touch it any more than that.
Yeah, it's funny because I just taught my grandkids how to shoot last summer, and the youngest one at the time was 7. And so, and I can always tell who's liberal, who's not. Conservatives say, "Oh, that's awesome," and the liberals say, "Well, don't you think it's like kind of young?" So, no, I actually learned to shoot when I was 6. Yeah.
Well, I think as conservatives, one of the things that we loathe about the left, and that's not just a conservative thing. One of the things that we just, as human beings, as we don't want to have, we despise people who have a double standard.
Right.
We despise people who have a double standard, but yet with the Second Amendment, I think a lot of us, we don't realize that our views are actually, in fact, a double standard.
Often, yeah.
And I think that's where you really kind of changed some of my views. And it was bitter crow for me to eat that crow. But I had to say, you know what, if I'm going to be truly intellectually honest with myself, then I have to tweak my paradigm a little bit and say, you know what, I'm going to have to deal with this, even though I don't like it, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I have had that come from people before regarding the Second Amendment and a lot of other things, but especially the Second Amendment. And I appreciate that. So, listeners, now you're really intrigued, right, listeners? You're definitely going to be back next week. Well, sorry for my tardiness today. I apologize. What was I, about 7 minutes late? And I apologize for that. But all of you guys that waited the 7 minutes, I appreciate you. I thank you. And I want to throw out, if you don't mind me plugging something real quick, a couple of things. I am also doing a new radio program on KPRZ in San Diego, and it's on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. They got the podcast page up. First 3 episodes is available. I haven't put them on my page yet, but if you go to kprz.com and you look up the podcast page, my first 3 shows are available. And I want to explain something real quick. This show is different than anything I've done. This is Constitution class. Constitution Radio on KMET, that's the issues of the day through the lens of the Constitution. But this K-Praise show, and this is why some of you I think may appreciate it, is the Constitution through the lens of Christianity. And that's really the heavy hammer there when it comes to that, is really understanding how our faith and the Constitution go hand in hand. That's what that show is really about. And it's a 1-hour show. I'm pre-recording, so it comes across a little different. So there's less ums and stuttering because I take it all out when I edit it. But I would love for you guys to enjoy the show and let me know what you think. constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com. The other thing is this. I appreciate all you folks out there buying my books, man. It's been great because a lot of my books have been going down through the mail system, and I'm appreciating that. If you want any of them autographed, email me. We'll make it work. Constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com. I'm working on 3 books right now. 3. And 2 of them I'm very excited about. One of them is a second edition, an update of my older book, Basic Constitution. I'm updating it. And the other one is all of these documents I talk about, the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, the 1817 veto by James Madison, with commentary, with articles that commentate on them. And so I'm very jazzed about that. So anyway, so that's what I'm working on. So stay tuned. I can't wait to get them out there to you. And as soon as they're ready to roll, I'll let you know. If you want to be on my email list, politicalpistachio.com. Ron, finally, the final thing I want to say is thank you, man. You're awesome. I appreciate you in ways you don't even know. And let me tell you, we give each other a hard time because we're friends too. But I tell you what, this man, he's the stuff, man. He is the catalyst behind a lot of stuff. People don't realize he's the man behind the scenes on so many things. He makes things happen, and he does it for no reason other than he believes in the cause. That's it.
Cause, man. It's we don't have freedom. We don't have nothing. So
yeah. So I appreciate you. So I wanted to make sure you got the big thank you there at the end.
I appreciate that. Thank you, brother. Well, on that note, guys, we're going to call it a day. I think Scott's live now, so you can jump over to hear what he has to say. And Doug has got to get on the road to go down to Dana Point and sit next to that beautiful ocean view. So
there you go. All right, brother. Have
thanks,
a good night.
guys. Have a great night.